You're listening to the Josh Parnell Leadership Podcast. We all have leadership within us, and once we understand how to challenge perceived limitations, we're able to influence those we're leading. Josh is a leadership coach, trainer, and speaker. He's also a veteran of the United States Air Force with over 20 years of leadership experience. Are you ready to transform your leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results? Let's get ready for liftoff. It's time to go from great to greater. Here's Josh in today's episode.
Welcome to the Josh Parnell Leadership Podcast. I am so excited to be back. This is our first episode in almost a month. Took pretty much the entire month of January off just for some much-needed rest. You know, I think we can look at how much we're moving in our life and think, hey, I can be taking my foot off the gas pedal, or I can have a perspective shift and say, all I'm doing is adding fuel to the tank. And I wanted to add some more fuel to the tank because 2024 is going to be a big year. So I'm excited to be back with you. Today's episode is titled Leading a Legacy, which is also the name of my book, which was just released yesterday on Amazon. If you go to Amazon, you can find Leading a Legacy, How to Live Today to Make an Impact for Tomorrow. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about leading a legacy and what that means. At the end of our life, we're all going to be leaving some kind of legacy. And so the legacy that we're leading determines the legacy that we're leaving. So what are we doing today to make an impact for tomorrow? So again, head on over to Amazon, check out the book, Leading a Legacy. You can search for it by searching for Leading a Legacy book, or simply by typing in my name, Josh Parnell, in the search bar. And if you would, please leave a review. Here's something I learned. If you were a first-time author with a first book on Amazon, your first week is critical to the book's success. So any review you'd be willing to leave, well, I say any, but really let's call it what it is. A 5-star review is exactly what I'm asking for. But regardless, let's get into today's episode. This is the episode I'm excited to share with you because we all have opportunities in our life to level up. And again, the legacy that we're leading determines the legacy that we're leaving. So today I want to talk about 5 specific areas on how we can level up our life. But the exciting news is that we are starting a 6-episode series on how to level up. So today's episode is just an introduction. We're talking about leading a legacy. I'm going to share a few points that I shared in the book, and also a couple of thoughts that have been heavy on my heart here as of late. But the other 5 episodes beyond this one is going to be how we can level up in 5 specific areas that I'm going to share with you today. And I have some incredible guests who are experts in those specific fields who are going to help us learn how to level up in those 5 areas. So let's go ahead and kick things off with sharing those 5 areas with you. I believe that anytime we can look to improve our lives personally, professionally, whatever we're looking at, I think there are 5 specific areas that we can focus on, beginning with number 1, spiritually. I think if we can level up spiritually and draw closer to God, it will help us become more aligned in the purpose that He has called for us. And so we can level up spiritually, we can level up physically, we can level up emotionally, academically, and financially. And so I'm going to repeat those just so we're on the same page here, but we can level up spiritually, physically, emotionally, academically, and financially. And I think that if we can really focus on those 5 areas, being mindful of just making small progress, small wins, stacking those wins over those 5 areas, our lives will look tremendously different over the course of time. And so, I mentioned the hiatus, if you will, that we took in the month of January. And one of the things that have been really heavy on my heart as of late is how there is so much power in rest. You know, I talked about how we can look at it as if we're taking our foot off the gas pedal, or we can say, you know what? No, what I'm doing right now is I'm adding fuel to the tank. And in order to add fuel to the tank, we've got to be able to rest. You know, there's power in rest and being able to prepare yourself to give of yourself. You know, I believe that true leadership is servant leadership. And with servant leadership, it is giving of yourself, of your resources, of your time, your effort, and energy. Servant leadership means you are pouring into others and investing in others so that they can grow and develop the way that God intended. And when we're focusing on leveling up ourselves, again, spiritually, physically, emotionally, academically, or financially, we've got to ask ourselves, am I pouring from an empty cup? Because if I'm saying yes to everyone and everything around me, for every yes, there's a corresponding no. And sometimes we might be saying no to ourselves. Sometimes we might be saying no to our family. One of the stories that I share in my book is when I came home a couple years ago after a training week. This was when I was at my corporate job. Absolutely loved what I did at my corporate job. Loved who I was doing it with. Loved really everything about it. The culture there is incredible, and it was a long week for me. It was at the end of a training week, and training weeks were always my busiest weeks, but also the most exciting weeks. I love training weeks because we got to meet a lot of incredible people. Creating and cultivating relationships is something that's very important to me. It's very near and dear to my heart, and it's really why I do what I do now, which is to reach people and build leaders. I want to connect with people. I love connecting with people. I believe that whenever you can connect, we of course are connecting through three different ways: authenticity, humility, and vulnerability. But we're connecting with people so that they understand, hey, I truly and genuinely care about you, and I will do whatever I need to do in order to help you grow and develop. And so, that being said, when I'm in a training week, I'm giving my all. I mean, I'm going to work giving 100, right? And what happened was I came home after a training week. This was a Thursday evening, and I got in my car and headed home and was just reflecting on the week. It was a phenomenal week. And when I walked in, I immediately started sharing with my wife how great the week was. And I could see her body language change in a way where she almost looked like she was about to share something with me that may be concerning, or she didn't look entirely happy. I don't know how else to explain it. And so she stopped me and said, "Hey, Josh, I love you. I'm glad that you love what you do. I'm glad that you love who you do it with. But sometimes it feels like we're getting your leftovers." And when I tell you that hit me like a ton of bricks, that's an understatement. I mean, she was being very upfront, honest, transparent, and vulnerable with me by saying, hey, sometimes it feels like our family is not getting 100. And she was right. And that was a light bulb moment for me where I recognized I have got to slow down and rest. I've got to set boundaries. I've got to understand what compartmentalization means. Because if I'm going to work giving everyone and everything around me 100, and I'm getting in my car after work and immediately decompressing, taking a breath, decompressing, right? And I'm lowering, I'm turning it off, if you will. And it stays off when I get home. I'm not doing anyone in my family, including myself, any benefit. I'm doing everyone a disservice. And so it was a lesson I needed to learn. It was a message I needed to hear. And I'm forever thankful and grateful that she shared that with me, because from that point on, I was extra mindful of what boundaries meant to me and how important boundaries are for us in our lives. Boundaries are not necessarily for those around us. Boundaries are for ourselves, because we're establishing what we will and won't tolerate. And as I mentioned, for every yes, there's often a corresponding no. We've got to recognize that there are people in our life and priorities in our life that we might be saying no to because we are extending ourselves and overextending ourselves to everyone and everything else. And we might be pouring from an empty cup. And so when I talk about some analogies of what this looks like, how can we add fuel to the tank? So when you get on an airplane and the pilot comes across the intercom and they make their announcements, and they'll say, if something were to go haywire, then you might have some oxygen masks falling from the top of the plane. Now, what is the message that they share with all of the passengers when the oxygen masks were to fall, if they were to fall? They say, before you do anything else, put your oxygen masks on first before you start helping those around you. So I'm thinking, hey, I'm a father of 4. So even if I have my kids with me, you're telling me to put my oxygen masks on first? And the answer is yes, because we have to be able to take care of ourselves in order to most effectively take care of those around us. And sometimes ourselves need rest. We live in this hustle culture. It's this hustle and bustle, like just grind all day, every day type of culture where it almost feels or seems like rest is a bad thing. If you're resting, you're lazy. If you're resting, you're not really in it. And the reality is, we have to be able to rest in order to serve those around us most effectively. So, my opinion is to take care of yourself first. It's self-care. It's boundaries. It's being selfish, whatever you want to call it. I don't care if you call it being selfish. If that means you're taking care of yourself first, that's exactly what I believe we need to do in order to be prepared to take care of those around us. There's a book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And towards the end of the book, he talks about a particular quote where he says, when the pressure is on, we don't rise to the occasion. We fall to our highest level of preparation. And when you think about it, we can't fully be prepared if we're not giving ourself, our mind, our body, our soul, the rest it deserves. Another analogy that I'll share with you is, when we go to the gym and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to get some big muscles. I'm going to get some six-pack abs, a trimmer waistline. That's all the things that I want from a gym, right? I go to the gym to work out, and the results I'm discussing or the results I'm sharing is what I'm expecting. But we have to remember that we're not growing at the gym. Our muscles are not growing when we're at the gym. We're actually breaking down our muscle. And if you're watching this episode on YouTube, you can see the motion I'm using with my hand. We're shrinking our muscles when we go to the gym because we're tearing them down. We're breaking them down. Our muscles actually grow on rest. We grow when we're sleeping. We grow when we're resting. And our minds deserve the same. We have to be able to give ourselves the rest that we deserve, because ultimately that is what those around us deserve. So that's one thing that's been kind of heavy on my heart lately. Going back to the topic of legacy, and leading a legacy. That's, of course, one way we can focus on how to be prepared to leave a legacy is to give ourselves the rest that we deserve. But something I want to share is how humans have up to 60,000 thoughts per day. I'm going to repeat myself. Humans have up to 60,000 thoughts per day. And studies show that 80% of our thoughts are negative and 90% of our thoughts are repetitive. So it's no wonder why we regularly experience stress and doubt and worry and concern and anxiety and fear. But we know that fear is simply false evidence appearing real, and we're always going to find evidence in the things that we believe. And one of the greatest mistakes that any of us can ever make is assuming that all of our thoughts are true. And so when I talk about taking power over our thoughts, this is what's going to help us lead a legacy to ultimately leave a legacy that we can be proud of, that our family and our generations after us can be proud of. And here's why. Our thoughts will dictate our feelings, and our feelings will dictate our actions, and our actions will dictate our legacy. So if we want to change our legacy, it begins with our thoughts. We have to learn how to take control over our thoughts. There are a number of different ways that we can begin taking control over our thoughts. And the first step I will always encourage anyone to do is to hire a coach. Hire a coach, find a mentor, find someone who is willing to speak truth into you, because multiple minds are better than one, and it is helpful for us to gain perspective through a coach for clarity and direction. With perspective, the way that we view things drives the way that we do things. And something I've learned over the course of time, being a coach and being coached on a regular basis, is imagine there is a small scope. And again, if you're watching this episode on YouTube, you can see the motions I'm making with my hands. There is a small scope with a blurry lens. And through coaching, through mentorship, through questions being asked, through clarity and direction being gained, ultimately perspective. And again, perspective will help us view things differently and subsequently do things differently. All we needed was a 3 or 4 degree shift in a lot of areas in our life to level up spiritually, physically, emotionally, academically, and financially. And now you'll notice that the circle that I had, the scope that I began with, it is much larger. And we're no longer operating through a small scope with a blurry lens. Now the scope is incredibly larger and much more clear. So now we're not just looking at the trees. We're not even looking at the forest through the trees. Now we're looking at the forest and the trees because we had help from somebody. We had help from a coach. I cannot stress this enough. I will emphasize this. I'm going to have a coach till the day I leave a legacy. And that is because I recognize that I cannot do things alone. I cannot do things by myself. And so I stay in prayer. I stay in my relationship with God, and I do everything I can to better it. But I also know I need to level up spiritually very often, just like I want to level up physically, emotionally, academically, and financially. But a coach can help us with all of these things. So that's one thought that I have. The last thing I want to share with you is, there's been a lot of folks that I've worked with over the years who there's a few where it's very evident that they are still working through some past experiences that they haven't gone through and grown through, that they haven't been able to heal from. And when that happens, a lot of times I find clients of mine or people who I'm working with who feel the need to prove themselves rather than improve themselves. And I think they're working on the improving part, but the focus is on the proving part. And this is something that I've been sharing with a handful of people lately, how, when we go to our jobs and we're working with our teams, you might be thinking of a team member, and it might even be you listener, you might be thinking of someone who always feels the need to prove themselves. And something I'd like to share is that you proved yourself in the interview process. When you got hired, you proved that you were worthy of the hire. And beyond that, now it's about performance. Now it's about continuous improvement. There should be no expectation for you to master anything overnight because it's impossible. Perfection is unattainable. It's reserved for God. We're always perfecting our craft, but we're never going to get it perfect, right? And so we're looking at how we can improve rather than prove. So if this is you, my encouragement to you is to focus on improving rather than proving. You proved yourself when you got there. You went through the interview process, you got hired, you're on the team, you're a valuable member of the team. Now let's focus on improving yourself. So how can we stay focused on improving? I'm going to share a story with you as we begin to wrap up this episode, and it is about sharpening the axe. And so once upon a time, there's a very strong woodcutter who applied to work at a timber merchant, and he got the job. Pay was fantastic, work conditions were excellent, and for these reasons, he was motivated to do his very best. So his first day on the job, he goes to his boss, and his boss gives him an axe, and he says, I want you to go chop down as many trees as you can. So the woodcutter goes out his first day, and he works tirelessly, chopping down trees all day long. He's able to chop down 18 trees on his first day. So he brings 18 trees back to his boss. He gives them to his boss, and his boss says, wow, that's fantastic. Motivated by his boss's words, the woodcutter is determined to go out the second day and chop down even more trees. So that was his intent. He goes out the second day, he works tirelessly, chopping down trees, but he's only able to chop down 15 trees on his second day on the job. Hey, you know what? No big deal, the woodcutter thought. I'm going to go out the third day and just crush it. I'm going to go out the third day and chop down more trees on the third day than the first 2 days combined. So that was his intent. He goes out the third day, he works tirelessly, chopping down trees, but he's only able to chop down 10 trees on his third day on the job. He was confused. He was apologetic. He went to his boss, said, boss, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on. I think I'm losing my strength. His boss looks at him and asks the question, when was the last time that you sharpened your axe? Sharpen my axe, the woodcutter said. I haven't had time to sharpen my axe because I've been too busy chopping down trees. And the moral of the story is we get like this in our own life sometimes. We're doing the same thing over and over and over again, day in and day out, and we're not truly taking time to step back and sharpen our axe. We have the opportunity. Believe it or not, we do have the time. A lot of us are going to say, well, hey, I don't have the time. But the reality is we're likely not making the time. And so if I'm talking about sharpening the axe and leveling up, again, those 5 areas, leveling up spiritually, physically, emotionally, academically, and financially. And beyond this episode, for the next 5 episodes, we're going to have experts in each one of those 5 fields help us and educate us on how we can level up in those areas. So again, spiritually, physically, emotionally, academically, and financially. And last thing I want to do is share with you that I'm excited to announce that this episode, beyond today, so moving forward, we are going weekly. So for the last year, we've been doing this every other week, every other Wednesday, but now I'm excited to say that every Wednesday, a new episode is going to be released. So tune in to next Wednesday's episode as we learn from Pastor Jason Robinson, my pastor at Church of the King in Katy, Texas. We learn how to level up spiritually from PJ. And so I'm excited to share this episode with you guys. It was one of the favorite episodes I've ever done. So I'm really excited to share this with you. I know he's going to bring a wealth of knowledge that all of us are going to walk away from better than before. So thanks again, everyone, for being here. Every episode, we look to transform our leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results. So if you haven't done so yet, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. Share this episode, share this podcast with your friends and family members. Ask them to subscribe. Please leave a review. The more reviews we have, the more this podcast gets pushed across all platforms where we can collectively reach people and build leaders. So again, thanks everyone. Have a great day. Don't forget to smile today. Tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. I'm Josh Parnell, reminding you to keep leading well.